Bonjour, je m'appelle Denis Babin. Bienvenue à cette conférence de presse virtuelle des ministres Eleanor Ojveski, Tim Hodgson, Mandy gull-masty et Julie Dabrusin. They will provide an update on the forecast for the 2025 wildfires season. Ensuite suivront les questions des journalistes. Monsieur, mesdames les ministres, à vous la parole. Over to you.
You have the floor.
Minister, you can go.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you so much for joining us today for our second National Wildfire Update of the season. I'm joined by Minister Hodgson, Minister gull-masty, and Minister Dabrusin, and they'll each share updates from their respective portfolios. To those of you living with the uncertainty that these wildfires bring, you are in our thoughts. You've shown incredible strength and resilience in the face of ongoing challenges. And I want you to know that your federal government is there for you. They are not facing this alone. 2 Canadian Air Force members who helped evacuate individuals in sometimes very difficult situations, thank you so much for getting every single person out of fire danger and to safety. And to the first responders who put their lives on the line every single day, we cannot thank you enough. To date, more than 533 firefighters from 5 countries, including the United States, New Zealand, Australia, Costa Rica, and Mexico, have also contributed to our wildfire fighting efforts this season. To the international crews who've left their homes and their families to support us, thank you so very much. We're also grateful to our NGO partners, the Red Cross, St. John Ambulance, Search and Rescue Volunteer Association of Canada, Team Rubicon, and to our municipal and provincial colleagues on the heavy and urban search and rescue task forces. Your work is saving lives. As of July 18th, 561 wildfires are burning in Canada, and the national wildfire preparedness level remains at level 5. And for those of you wondering what that means, it means resources from each part of the country is engaged and that we stand by to mobilize further resources as needed. So some provinces have preparedness levels that are low, like Quebec, and they're helping by mobilizing firefighters where we need them most. So really everyone's chipping in to help. And I want to thank my provincial and territorial counterparts for their incredible cooperation in helping other provinces when it's been required and needed. Thank you. I'm also here to report that on July 10th, I approved a request for assistance from the province of Manitoba on behalf of Garden Hill First Nation. And this mobilized Armed Forces aircraft and personnel to support the community's evacuation. Thanks to a great coordinated effort, nearly 3,000 residents of Garden Hill First Nation were safely evacuated to Winnipeg on July 9th and 10th, and that evacuation is now complete. On July 12th, I approved a second request for assistance from the province of Manitoba, and it activated what we call the Humanitarian Task Force. And those individuals are on the ground as we speak, helping people on the ground deal with the aftermath of these out of control wildfires. And they'll be offering support such as staffing and coordination, shelter, transportation, food, and water. In June, you'll recall that we were pleased to announce that the Government of Canada would match donations to the Canadian Red Cross's appeals in the provinces of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And both of those governments also said that they would match donations. So I'm happy to say that as of this week, more than $9.4 million has been donated to the Red Cross. And of course, those funds will triple by virtue of the provincial and the federal matching. So that's just good news. Je tiens à remercier toutes les personnes qui ont fait un don. Grâce à vos contributions, les communautés touchées reçoivent le soutien dont elles ont besoin en cette période extrêmement difficile. Our new government is focused on protecting Canadians and ensuring that help is there when it's needed most, and that includes responding quickly, helping communities recover, and easing the financial burden on those most affected. We are here for you now and will be here when it's time to return home and time to rebuild. Thank you, merci.
This is now the question portion of the event. We will start with people in the room, followed by people on Zoom. Juliane Lapointe, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, j'aimerais vous entendre.
Hello.
Oh,
Désolé, j'ai été trop vite.
Sorry, too fast.
Should I proceed?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you virtually from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat people. As we just heard from Eleanor, many communities across Canada continue to face devastating wildfire conditions. My heart goes out to those currently evacuated from their homes, those on the front lines, working to protect people and property, and all those who have lost community members and infrastructure. Your federal government stands with you to support, protect, and rebuild. This year's wildfire season continues to be challenging. There have been over 3,000 wildfires this year to date, resulting in approximately 5.5 million hectares burned. Conditions have been especially difficult in the prairies in Ontario, where the Government of Canada has assisted with evacuation and coordinating firefighting resources, as you just heard. Looking ahead, forecasts point to above average temperatures across much of Canada through the end of August, with dry conditions expected to intensify in the coming weeks, particularly in the west and the north. Based on these weather forecasts, Natural Resources Canada's models predict elevated wildfire risk for the remainder of July from Yukon eastward to northwestern Ontario and for Nova Scotia and eastern New Brunswick. By August, wildfire activity is expected to continue to increase and to persist to well above average conditions over much of Western Canada, with the highest fire danger in southern British Columbia. As we brace for what lies ahead, we are reminded of the critical importance of the people who stand between the fires and our communities. I, like Minister Olszewski, again extend my sincere thanks to the firefighters, first responders, and volunteers on the front lines who continue to work tirelessly, often in dangerous conditions, to protect lives and property. And as was said, this includes the crews from Mexico, Costa Rica, the United States, New Zealand, Australia, and Chile. While some have since returned home, we are grateful for their support during these difficult times. Their efforts underscore just how far-reaching the impacts of fire are and why a coordinated whole-of-society response is essential. I'm sure Minister Gull-Masty will go into further detail, but I also want to express that I'm thinking of the Indigenous communities that are often on the front lines of wildfires and who are disproportionately affected by the fire's impact. I thank them for their traditional knowledge they bring to make our firefighting more effective across the country. The last time we gathered for a wildfire forecast briefing, I spoke about how wildfires are not just an environmental issue, but a major economic challenge for Canada as well. Last year alone, insured damages exceeded $8.5 billion. And by 2040, Natural Resources Canada estimates that fire suppression costs alone could double as wildfires become more frequent and severe. To ensure we are prepared and resilient in the face of these threats, today we are announcing an investment of nearly $12 million over 4 years to establish the Wildfire Resilience Consortium of Canada. The consortium will serve as a national center of excellence for wildfire innovation and knowledge. It will connect domestic, international governments, the private sector, wildfire scientists and experts, and affected communities to share knowledge, science, and technology so we can fight fires better. It will also support Indigenous fire stewardship and the cultural use of fire to improve wildfire resilience. The WRCC will advance many of these actions in the Kananaskis Wildfire Charter, through which Canada and our G7 partners will promote global cooperation on wildfires by sharing data and best practices to strengthen wildfire preparedness, response, and recovery. Across this country, wildfires continue to endanger our communities, challenge our emergency services, and impact the health and livelihood of Canadians. But while the challenges are great, so too is our resolve. Let us be clear, we are not standing idly by. We are investing in increased firefighting capacity, purchasing specialized equipment, reducing wildfire risks, and supporting affected communities. And we are doing this alongside all levels of government, Indigenous communities, industry, experts, and all Canadians. We will meet the moment with the urgency it demands and the determination it deserves. Merci, thank you.
Next minister, you can go.
Thank you. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everybody. First, I want to offer my condolences and solidarity to those who are grieving loved ones or facing hardship during this difficult wildfire season. Thank you to all of the First Nations leadership for your tireless work to protect and support your communities and traditional territories. Alongside the ministers and departmental staff from across different government, across government, we are working together to help keep people safe and to ensure that effective prevention and response measures are in place. Merci aux dirigeants, au leadership des Premières Nations pour tout ce que vous faites pour protéger et soutenir vos communautés et territoires. Moi et mes collègues du gouvernement travaillons ensemble pour aider et assurer votre sécurité. These past months, I have been in constant communication with First Nations leadership, emergency management teams, community members, those individuals that are working and helping at evacuation sites, as well as with my federal and provincial counterparts. Their leadership has been essential to informing our approach to emergency response and wildfire preparedness. This wildfire season has been especially devastating. Since April 1st, 100 wildland fires have led to the evacuation of 66 First Nations on-reserve communities. This has displaced over 39,000 people. As of today, 30 First Nations are still under evacuation. Mon ministre continue de collaborer avec toutes les nations touchées par ces feux, les provinces, les territoires et tous nos partenariats pour surveiller l'activité des feux et de intervenir rapidement. La crise climat provoque des feux de forêt qui sont plus en plus fréquents et intenses. Les communautés des Premières Nations sont touchées de manière disproportionnée. Ils sont environ 18 fois plus susceptibles d'être évacués hors d'urgence, en raison de leur déplacement isolé et leur vulnérabilité aux incendies et aux inondations. To truly advance emergency management, First Nations must be full and equal partners. First Nation leadership and community members are best positioned to advise on appropriate practices, as each brings a deep knowledge of their lands and traditions developed over countless generations and with deep connection to their territory. This knowledge is vital to effective emergency preparedness and response. We will continue to center on Indigenous leadership and their expertise and support a First Nations-led approach to emergency management and the agreements that reflect their leadership and vision. Through the Emergency Management Assistance Program, or EMAP, my department reimburses 100% of eligible costs incurred by First Nations, host communities, provinces, and territories, and third-party providers during these evacuations. EMAP also works with evacuees to deliver culturally appropriate services. Since the 1st of April this year, this program has provided over $191.6 million to support eligible First Nation responses and recovery efforts. Ce financement contribue également à la renforce de leur capacité à long terme partout de le pays. Le programme soutient plus de 280 postes de coordonnateurs en gestion des situations d'urgence à temps plein ou à temps partiel. Au sein de les communautés des Premières Nations, les conseils, aux tribunaux et les organisations partout au Canada. To all of the chiefs, to the first responders, emergency management officers and teams, support workers, community leaders, thank you. Your leadership is guiding communities through this crisis. The Government of Canada stands with you before, during, and after wildfire season. Un grand merci de moi à toutes les chefs, toutes les équipes d'urgence, les premiers intervenants, le personnel de soutien et les leaders dans les communautés pour tout ce que vous faites. Je vous remercie profondément. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating, for supporting, and we continue on in this process. Miigwech, Kananaskis. Merci tout le monde. Thank you.
Thank you. Alors, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. I'm joining you from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Chippewa people, and with the Mississaugas as a credit, it's treaty lands. I want to start by speaking to Canadians across the country who've been affected by the wildfire season. I know it's been an incredibly difficult and uncertain time. Many have been forced to leave their homes. Others are worried about the safety of their families and their communities. And as I say that, I want to say, please know that you're not alone, that we are here to support you. Nos experts travaillent jour et nuit pour assurer votre sécurité et celle de la population canadienne ailleurs au pays. Ils utilisent les dernières technologies et données scientifiques pour produire les prévisions météo précises et des renseignements sur la qualité de l'air et les feux de forêt. Ils surveillent de près les conditions propices aux feux, la propagation possible des feux et le déplacement anticipé de la fumée dans tout le pays. Ils sont en communication avec les services d'urgence et les gardent au courant de l'évolution de la situation. Ainsi, les autorités locales peuvent prendre des décisions pour protéger les vies humaines et les biens de la population. D'heure en heure, nous mettons à jour à la Côte Air Santé pour que la population canadienne comprenne les effets de la fumée des feux de forêt sur l'air qu'elle respire et l'impact sur la santé. En utilisant nos réseaux d'instruments spécialisés dans tout le pays, nous recevons des données en temps réel qui nous aident à surveiller les particules fines dans l'air qui sont néfastes pour notre santé. Our efforts are strengthened through close collaboration with provincial and territorial partners, Indigenous communities, and local authorities. This Team Canada approach is helping to ensure that the information we are providing is timely, reliable, and supporting effective responses on the ground. Getting that information quickly is becoming more and more important every year because wildfires are becoming more frequent and more severe. We know that the changing climate plays a significant role in this. Rising global temperatures are creating longer dry seasons and hotter conditions, which in turn increases the risk of wildfires. These changes affect not only the environment, but also the health, safety, and livelihoods of communities across Canada. Pour combattre ces feux, il faut aussi combattre les changements climatiques. Les recherches scientifiques en cours et les prévisions améliorées sont des outils essentiels pour nous adapter à la réalité d'un environnement évoluant rapidement. Elles nous aident à prédire les risques des feux de forêt de façon plus précise, ce qui nous permet de mieux nous préparer et de mieux intervenir. Notre travail aide à créer des communautés plus fortes et plus résilientes pour l'avenir. Durant ces moments difficiles, nous avons à cœur de fournir à la population canadienne les meilleures données scientifiques et la meilleure information possible. Ensemble, nous allons relever ce défi en protégeant l'environnement, nos communautés et notre avenir. Thank you. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur, Mesdames les ministres, we'll now take questions from reporters. We'll start with reporters on site, followed by people on Zoom. Juliane Lapointe, Radio-Canada.
Testing 1, 2. Ça marche? OK. Juliane Lapointe de Radio-Canada. J'aimerais vous entendre parce qu'il y a un porte-parole qui a dit pendant la séance de brefage technique, juste avant la conférence de presse, que les processus en place au gouvernement fédéral pour répondre aux situations d'urgence comme les feux de forêt semblent plus assez suffisants pour faire face aux désastres qu'on voit en ce moment, qu'on a vu dans les dernières années. Donc, est-ce que c'est un constat que vous faites ça, qu'on n'est plus assez équipé dans la façon de gérer là, ces situations-là au gouvernement?
Je pense que je vais commencer de l'aspect des communautés autochtones. Je pense que cette année, c'est clair qu'on voit pour la première fois plusieurs feux de forêt dans plusieurs provinces et territoires. C'est vraiment hors du norme. C'est pour moi un extrême. Puis, je pense que ça démontre vraiment des grands besoins pour être mieux équipés pour la réalité qui va venir dans le futur du Canada. Pour moi, j'ai vécu une expérience, ça fait 2 ans. On avait plusieurs feux de forêt dans le territoire de Québec. Là, je pense que j'ai appris un peu ce qui s'est passé dans ce processus-là, mais de le voir en temps réel dans plusieurs provinces, ça, c'est vraiment un autre niveau d'exercice. Puis ça démontre vraiment, comme j'ai dit, une nouvelle réalité qui va avoir besoin de plus de support, plus d'investissement, plus de manières de faire des choses pour assurer que le but de tout le monde est vraiment dans un bon état, qui peut retourner dans leur communauté avec leur famille et d'être supporté avec tout ce qui s'est passé dans une période de feu de forêt.
Est-ce qu'il y en a d'autres qui veulent répondre?
Would any other minister like to respond?
If I can, si je peux, c'est juste parce que je ne sais pas si Eleanor a donné des informations et Tim Hodgson, les 2 ministres aussi, des investissements et de l'argent qui est disponible maintenant. Et peut-être, si c'est possible qu'ils répondent en anglais, peut-être ils sont capables de donner un peu plus d'informations des nouveaux investissements qu'ils ont annoncés aujourd'hui. Like Eleanor and Ministers Olszewski and Hodgson, you both made announcements respecting money that is being invested or that's been made available through donations right now. I thought maybe if you could provide that information, it might be helpful to answer that question.
We'll now go on Zoom. Oh, sorry.
Today, we announced an investment of $11.7 million over 4 years to establish the Wildlife Resilience Consortium. The money is going to be used to share knowledge, facilitate collaboration, and accelerate the use of cutting-edge science and technology in wildfire prevention, mitigation, and preparedness and response.
Here's what I found.
I'll just add a comment with respect to the Red Cross then. The monies that I referenced are monies that were collected by the Red Cross in the provinces of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And in June, I had announced that the federal government would be matching those donations. And both provinces, Manitoba and Saskatchewan, also said that they would as well. So every dollar that was contributed to the wildfire effort by Canadians ends up effectively being $3. And so, that will go a long way in assisting those the most affected by this wildfire season. Thank you.
D'accord. Donc ensuite, peut-être sur la coordination entre les différents niveaux de gouvernement, on vient d'entendre en point de presse la première ministre de l'Alberta, Danielle Smith, dire que c'est pas toujours évident, critiquer la capacité du fédéral à avoir réagi, par exemple, quand il y a eu les feux de Jasper il y a un an. Il y a un rapport aussi qui vient de sortir qui montre qu'il y a eu certaines lacunes dans la façon de répondre à ces feux-là, notamment dans les parcs nationaux. Est-ce que vous sentez au gouvernement fédéral qu'il faut simplifier peut-être le processus pour que ce soit plus facile de répondre rapidement dans des situations d'urgence, malgré le fait qu'il y a différentes couches de gouvernement?
Désolée, je ne parle pas bien le français, but as I understood the question, you're asking about the report that was released yesterday with respect to the wildfire last year in Jasper and some comments that were made by Premier Smith. And I don't think it's helpful for me to discuss those comments, but what I will say is that we're in the process of reviewing that independent report, and I will have more to say about it in the coming days. And, this is a tragic event that left a scar, left its mark, not only on the national park and on the town, but on the residents of Jasper as well. And the anniversary of that event is next week. And so I will be traveling to Jasper next week, and I plan on having some very constructive discussions with the mayor, with business people, and with other individuals, hotel owners, and the like, the community in Jasper, and we will have discussions about the report that was released, and we'll have further discussions as well with respect to the rebuilding of Jasper and all of its components. So thank you for the question.
We'll now go with people on Zoom. Raim Mohamed, National Post.
Thank you for taking my question. This goes to both Minister Debrusin and Minister Olszewski on the subject of Jasper and wildfire activity in national park areas, federally protected areas. So in the time since last year, jurisdiction over Parks Canada, I believe, has moved from the Ministry of Environment to the Ministry of Heritage. Could either of you speak to the involvement of Minister Guilbeault going forward in something like a Jasper wildfire or a wildfire that will take place within federally protected parkland?
I can tell you that it's my understanding that Minister Guilbeault continues to work on behalf of Parks Canada with respect to the Jasper wildfires. As I've indicated, I will be there next week, though, and I will be meeting with a number of different groups within the town of Jasper, and we'll be in ongoing discussions with them about the rebuilding. I do know as well that there are significant efforts being undertaken. They were undertaken at the time and before the Jasper wildfire as well, to make sure that Parks Canada has the best response that it possibly can have to these wildfire situations. Thank you. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Not really. I think that you answered that question fully.
Mike Lecouteur, CTV News.
Hi, thanks for taking our questions. I wanted to sort of take a wider view of this. Given the forecast that we've seen from your departments, Canada is on track for the second worst wildfire season of this decade. How concerned are all of you about this and what we could see for the next few months?
I'll answer from my perspective as the minister responsible for emergency management. And, you know, we're always concerned. Wildfires are part of nature. They're going to happen. Where we're concerned is where there's an interface between communities and you know, wildland areas. And so absolutely, always we're concerned. The safety of Canadians is our first priority at all times. I would like to assure Canadians, though, that we have huge situational awareness by virtue of the Government Operations Center and other data that comes to us from a number of sources. And we monitor what the situation looks like as well as what it's likely to be in the upcoming days and weeks and even months. And so, you know, we're very concerned about making sure that we have the best data at our fingertips. And in addition, I just want to add that, you know, wildfires, the control of wildfires commences at a local level initially, and you can see that that makes sense. You know, it's people can mobilize on the ground in the municipality, in the town, in the First Nation that's threatened by potentially a wildfire. And then as those local authorities require more resources in order to deal with the wildfire, then provincial and territorial resources will be brought to bear. And then in the event that is insufficient in terms of response, then there are ways of triggering a response from the federal government. And so I want to assure Canadians that the federal government not only monitors, but you've heard all of the ministers say this, that we work so closely with our provincial and territorial counterparts so that we can proactively deal with situations. In other words, we're not waiting till the worst thing happens. Our department has ongoing discussions with provinces and territories every single day to make sure that we have an understanding of how they're resourced and what they might need from us. So, as I say, we're just to sum it all up, we're always concerned about the safety of Canadians, but we're doing everything possible to make sure that we can manage the situations proactively. I hope that answers your question.
Somewhat. I just sort of want to get almost like a reaction from you about how concerned you are about how bad it is, especially with the forecast going forward. But also, I wanted to ask you concretely, you say that you're working with people on the ground. So what are you doing to make sure you're minimizing the impacts on the ground, if you can, if possible, given the forecast seems as dire as it does?
Actually, I did think I answered that. We're trying very hard, and we have discussions with our provincial and territorial counterparts basically on a round-the-clock basis. And so I'm in touch with my counterpart ministers in other provinces virtually in advance of when we think a situation might arise. And so, and I think what I've said as well is we're always concerned about wildfires. You know, we always have a level of concern. And so the way we can meet that concern is, as I've indicated to you earlier, it's by monitoring the situation across the country and by proactively making sure that we have what we need in place to respond, whether that's water bombers, whether that's a requirement for the Canadian Armed Forces to do an evacuation, whether that's helping with supplying things like fire hoses, whether that's it can be a broad assortment of matters that we're concerned with. And in addition to that, and I'll let Minister gull-masty maybe add on to my comments, you know, she and her team work very closely, you heard her say, with First Nations to make sure that they're adequately resourced as well, not only in terms of the aftermath of a wildfire, but in making sure that they're adequately prepared as well, not just in terms of firefighting and fire suppression capabilities, but in terms of their ability to, you know, quickly and easily evacuate First Nations from First Nations reserves when and if that's necessary. What I will add to that is, you know, we do understand that these forest fire seasons, they're becoming longer, they're more severe. And so, you know, when we did the last update, one of the media asked me a question about what our department is doing in terms of, you know, making some changes to address, you know, what we know have been some challenges with respect to the wildfire season, and our department's in the process of doing that. We have been throughout the fire season thus far, and we will have some recommendations for some changes that will make it easier for us again to adapt to situations on a proactive basis. And those changes include building community resilience, because that's an aspect of, it's a dimension of dealing with wildfires and all other kinds of natural incidents and disasters that we need to be mindful of as well. So thank you for your question, Mike.
Thank you, Minister Olszewski. Look, I think that everybody in the room and everybody across Canada is seeing this as really an unprecedented fire season. It is, you know, I hope not the new reality that we have to live with, but I'm asking myself, you know, what this looks like. Traditional knowledge indicates that fire season is cyclical. We are really responding to what nature is showcasing to us as a need. I think we as humans can try to interject and try to work with improving that system, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have to be sure that we're responding to one critical factor, that is keeping people safe and giving people the tools that they need to be safe. For us, within ISC, it's really about giving communities the tools that they need. It could be ranging from emergency preparedness, capacity building, empowering emergency management operation teams, assisting with comms, communicating different levels of government, funding a fire break, funding for, you know, resource tools to be in place if the fire is near. It even ranges into a space where you're, you know, trying to help communities alleviate, you know, very severe air quality, providing equipment to ensure that, you know, communities have safe air to breathe. This is really a situation where it is unprecedented. Emergency management is an art. There's a lot of experts in the teams that are really providing key information to be sure that we are responding in a timely manner. Our provincial counterparts and all of the teams behind them are working in unity, are trying to serve and keep people safe. And I think that I can speak on behalf of all ministers is something very personal, that we serve Canadians. We want to assure Canadians that we are doing everything to respond to that need of safety. And this government's goal is to be sure that at the end of fire season, we come together, debrief, reflect, and put tools in place for the next possible time that this occurs. And I'm hoping that this is not something that we see regularly, but preparedness is part of emergency management as well. Thank you.
Sarah Ritchie, Canadian Press.
Thanks so much. This question's for Minister Olszewski. I just wanted to follow up on something that my colleague was asking you about earlier in this press conference. In the briefing before, earlier this afternoon, one of your officials said that disaster-driven events are outpacing the capacity of the emergency management system, and said that maintaining the status quo is the equivalent to doing less. In the past, two of your predecessors have talked about the creation or the potential creation of some sort of federal agency that would be able to oversee and assist with disasters, including wildfires. And so, given what your officials have said about the status quo being the equivalent to doing less, I'm wondering if you can give us an update on whether your department envisions creation of such an agency and where that process is at.
Thank you for the question, Sarah. And I can tell you that indeed we are looking at the creation of an agency as something that's a step that we may take. Our department's having those discussions, those exact same discussions as we speak. And in the discussions that we've had, we think that the formation of such an agency could have a very positive impact on our ability to coordinate how we respond to natural disasters across the country. Like we see that, so we're working out what the detail of that might look like, you know, whether that extends to things, it could be something like having water bombers that are regional, you know, placed in various parts of the country that can respond more quickly, particularly where we have provinces that don't have as robust a wildfire response as some other provinces. So that's one of the things we're considering. We're looking at the use of the humanitarian task force, which I alluded to earlier, and I mentioned some of them by name. Groups such as Team Rubicon and Heavy Search and Rescue, you know, whether or not we can coordinate, make better use and coordinate better the deployment of those groups as they are across the country, so that will enable, in some cases, perhaps more timely on the ground response. So absolutely, this is the kind of thing we're considering at this time. And I think when I was asked the question last time, I said we would likely know where we stood on this by the time, by the fall. And part of the reason for that is we are mindful of lessons learned from this fire season as well as prior fire seasons. We want to make sure we take into account, what's happened this time around and the good advice that we received from our provincial and territorial counterparts, from our First Nations allies, and from other experts that advise our department. So absolutely, this is something that is top of mind for my department.
I also want to follow up on that report about the Jasper fire. I recognize that you're working your way through that report, but Premier Danielle Smith is pointing the finger at the federal government. She's blaming the federal government for failing in the fire response. She said it is a federal fire that took place in a federal park. I guess I'm wondering what your response is to that, just on its face, and is that helpful?
I don't think it's helpful for me to respond to Premier Smith's comments this morning. What I would prefer to do is to continue my review of the report, have discussions, as I've indicated earlier, with the relevant parties in the town of Jasper, where I'll be in a few days' time, and then I will have something more comprehensive to say. And I think my understanding of what the report says is that it makes many comments. It talks about various ways in which the situation in Jasper could have been improved. That's not surprising. You know, anytime we look at an event in retrospect, we expect to see things that could have been done better. So this isn't surprising at all. And I think, it would be dangerous to take just an aspect of the report without looking at it in its totality as well, and considering all of its various recommendations. And that's something that that I will be doing with, I'll be very carefully reviewing the report and coming back to you, coming back to Canadians and to the media with further commentary in that regard. So I hope that's helpful.
This was the last question. J'aimerais remercier les ministres et les journalistes qui ont pris part à cette conférence de presse. Bonne fin de journée.
Participated in this press conference. Thank you. Good day.